Hello! Without wanting to bash any books, I thought I'd take this video as an opportunity to tell you about the 7 books I found most disappointing out of all the books I read during 2017. None of these books I am claiming are bad, and by all means, go and find out if you disagree with me and read these books and tell me I'm wrong. But these 7 books were all disappointing to me and didn't fulfill my expectations, perhaps, which I had in advance. The first book that I wanted to cautiously warn you of, because it has been quite popular on BookTube, is All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders, I believe. This, I think, is often marketed as a YA novel about the friendship between a girl and a boy who meet as kids, both outcasts in their own way. The girl thinking she has wonderful witchy skills, and the boy is a sort of brainy tech whiz. And obviously they both don't belong to the popular kids for these reasons. And it follows them through their child and teenage years, and they lose touch again, and in a way almost this sort of supernatural war breaks out around them, and they inadvertently are at the centre of it. This could have been a really cool book because both characters are cool, and the sort of clash almost between sort of traditional magic and new agey science fiction was really fun. I just found that it didn't work that well, and the ending I thought was just right and kitschy. But others do disagree with me, others have enjoyed this much more. I just thought it could have been so much more of a rich exploration of different nuances of magic, and it didn't bother to do that, in my opinion. Another book which, in my opinion, tried loads of things, and because of doing everything on the surface, didn't do one thing properly is the right word, was White is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi. This, again, is not an unpopular book. It is, how do I say this? The thing that I found interesting about it and what got me initially was the claim that part of the story is told from the point of view of a house. And I thought that was a really interesting aspect just of storytelling. But again, I felt like what was supposed to be a, how do I put this, magical, scary witch story in which you doubt your main characters just turned out to sort of be a half-baked mess. At the centre we have a father and his twins, a girl and a boy, who live in this house. Their mother has gone missing, died, disappeared, run out on them, we don't really know. And the family's backstory on the women's side gets explored. It is heavily suggested that there's a sort of witchy background, especially with the girl, the twin girl, just also really going off her knockers a bit. But there were so many elements of it. So there's this one storyline with this sort of suggestion that there's racist sort of hate crime going on, which then doesn't get further explored. There's the twin brother going off for university, but does he really? There's this friendship with a girl that the twin sister strikes up, which is it a love story? Is it not? It's just so much, she tries so much with this book, and so often I found myself turning a page, reading a new idea, thinking, oh, is this what it's going to be about? Have I now gotten what this book is actually trying to get me to explore? And then she just loses the thread, and that's it. I have also talked to other people who didn't really feel like they got the book. I'm not worried about that, even if there were aspects of the book that passed me by. I'm not too concerned, because I feel like the author also didn't always get what she wanted to be writing about. Would not recommend it. Read a book that is more sure of what it is trying to do, perhaps. Similarly, but even more disappointingly to me, even though I didn't think it was a worse book, was The Heart Goes Last by Margaret Atwood. This was really disappointing to me. Of course, I love The Handmaid's Tale, and the plot of The Heart Goes Last is that there is a experimental community that has been set up where people go to live and they spend 1 month in the neighborhood's prison, and each alternating month living in these pretty white suburban middle-class houses that are provided for them. And we start the story with the main couple that is barely scratching by, living in their car. I think he's unemployed, she works in a seedy bar, and they find out about this commercialized housing project in a way, and they go to live there. And there are some really interesting thoughts which this plot already allude to. I thought considerations of what freedom is worth for us were just really interesting, but it totally derails. It ends up trying to be a comedy, a sort of black comedy, making all sorts of weird metaphors for sort of free will, but also claiming your body. There's sort of sex bots. There's men being so crazed in their horniness because they can't have sex with their partners for a month that they start raping chickens. There's Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley in person. It just goes super crazy, and all of that would have been fine if it hadn't seemed so disjointed. It wasn't clever because all the characters were caricatures and not actually interesting, versatile, unique, believable individuals. And I was heavily disappointed and really wouldn't recommend The Heart Goes Last. Don't be fooled by the very cool premise. The fourth book that I found really disappointing, I will only mention briefly because I have heard other people talk about it, and it's the YA favourite When Dimple Met Rishi, about a very intelligent young woman girl who, before going to college, goes to a sort of techie summer school, and there, without her knowing, is brought together with Rishi, who is the son of another Indian American family, and she is supposed to fall in love with him. The reason why this story disappointed me was because it was pitched to me as a YA story that explores different cultures, this explores the question of arranged marriage and what place that has in today's society, and also a really, really strong, plucky main female character who doesn't just swoon over some guy and want to fall in love, but she wants a career, she wants to explore her own skill and talent. And it doesn't do any of those things. It's about a girl and a boy falling in love and forgetting everything else around them. So I found it really disappointing and can't join in with the hype, unfortunately. Then I have two thrillers that I read in 2017, which I would both really not recommend. The first is Silent Child by Sarah A. Denzil, which is about a mother whose son returns as a teenager after having been missing for 7 years, 8 years, something like that. He went missing as a small boy and was believed to have died during a flood. Obviously he hasn't, he has returned, but he's mute. So the story is about obviously what happened and uncovering what happened to the boy. He seems heavily traumatized, and that is suspected to be the reason why he does no longer talk. And I thought the psychological exploration of this case could have been interesting, but it's so see-through. Even though it's supposed to be sort of scary and claustrophobic and wondering what actually happened, keeping up the suspense is really difficult, because very soon nothing unexpected happens anymore. And that's also what was wrong, in my opinion, with the second thriller that I read that disappointed me, which was Remember Mia by Alexandra Burt. This is also playing on the missing child trope in Remember Mia. The highly unpredictable narrator mother loses her baby daughter, and we don't really know whether to trust her, whether she was actually kidnapped or whether she did something to the baby. Obviously we find out as the story unfolds, and again, nothing shocking happens. And it's really disappointing that the author, with every twist and turn, always chose to take the most obvious and least scary route. The only slightly different thing about this book is the ending, or like the last 20 pages. But even so, it's really unsatisfying. And I think there are so many thrillers you can choose from, even with this missing child trope, and just skip those two, I'd say, and pick a better book. And then finally, I have one more book, and this is the 7th book that I read in 2017 and found quite disappointing, and it is Meg Wolitzer's The Position. I crazily gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, which clearly shows that I have to reconsider how I rate my books. This is the story about, see, I don't even remember anymore. I think it's 3 siblings, 3 or 4, who find a sex manual that their parents wrote in the 70s, something like that. And it's about sort of unhappy white people who have it oh so hard because they were messed up by their successful parents writing a sex manual. And it's not that I have to truly feel sorry for characters to be empathetic with their feelings when I read about them, but it was just so forgettable. And the thing with Meg Wolitzer's books is that I always like her writing, but this plot just fell really flat for me. I really thought it was a case of sort of sex sells, because at the end of the day, who cares if your parents wrote a popular sex manual? If you're their child, you gotta face the fact that they probably had sex. So I didn't really get why it would be so awkward and such a big problem. And I really don't buy that the kids would be messed up because of one day finding this book standing in their bookshelves. Yeah, most of the characters were just quite whiny. And I think Meg Wolitzer's written better books, although I've yo-yoed back and forth, finding some of her books really good and some really quite disappointing. I'd recommend reading The Interestings. I thought that was a great book by Meg Wolitzer, and even though I read that much longer ago than The Position, more details are still fresh in my mind from that book, which just shows that it's so much more memorable. And even though I don't think you have to remember every single detail of a book to claim that you liked it, this one really has totally zapped through my brain, besides remembering that the characters just really didn't appeal to me. Read The Interestings. Those characters are nuanced and interesting, and also not always happy. So there you have it, 7 books that I really didn't enjoy, unfortunately, in 2017. All in all, I wouldn't say any of these were rubbish though, so that's a good thing. And I also think if you are in danger of reading a book that is rubbish and you've tried it for 50 pages, stop, put it away, read a good book. I'll talk to you soon, and if I don't talk to you very, very soon, then Happy New Year and happy reading. Bye.